Hey everyone, I am back to do another edition of Badger Beer Travels. If you remember, this is a new segment that we just started doing last month where I go and highlight a beer scene in kind of one of the lesser known, usually going to be a little bit smaller cities or towns around the great state of Wisconsin. I'm sure we will also dive into specific neighborhoods in Madison and Milwaukee, etc. But after doing Oshkosh last month, this month we are going to Burlington, Wisconsin. And for those not familiar, it's a little southwest of Milwaukee, not too far of a drive from those folks that live here. And there are actually two breweries, as you can tell here by the logo. Burlington has a population of about 11,000, part of Racine County, as I kind of hinted at. And I forgot that I actually put on here the actual distance. So it's not only southwest of Milwaukee, you can see that it is about 44 minutes southwest of Milwaukee and less than an hour and a half from Madison. One thing we're going to try to highlight here is, there's a few other things to do. There's an RC car hobby track there, as well as a Logic Puzzle Museum. And apparently, Fred's World's Best Burgers is there. Apparently, that's a big deal. And they are actually located right between the two breweries that we are about to discuss. A little fun fact you can see up there at the top that Burlington is apparently known as the Chocolate City. And that is because of the Nestle factory that was there for I don't know how many years. But so I guess that's apparently a thing. I was not aware of that before doing the research for this. But first of the two breweries that we will be discussing is the Runaway Micropub and Nano Brewery. So this spot opened in June of 2020. And interestingly, the building actually dates all the way back to 1890. And although it had many lives, the owners actually already had the building and were using it as their property management business before deciding to change it into a brewery. It's right downtown, so it's an old storefront, one that you would typically see in many downtowns around Wisconsin and other parts of the country as well. One of the fun facts that I learned when I visited there was that it's actually named. The name comes from, way back when the town was kind of first established. There was a lot of people traveling by horse and buggy. And when one of the horses would eventually, break away, because that kind of stuff happens, it was called a runaway. And that's what it was referred to in the newspapers. And so they decided to run with that. That's why you can see, there's a horse as the logo. They do also have a food menu there, which is something that is different between the two breweries that we'll be discussing. You can go onto their website. I know that it says apparently that it changes a little bit here and there. But it includes, different sandwiches, paninis. They have hot chili, mac and cheese, pot pies. So a nice little variety if you're looking for a bite to eat along with your beer, and some examples of their beer. So in a lot of these small places, you will often see, a lot of turnover, a lot of changes. But in this case, when I went through and actually looked at their current tap list, because I actually visited them late 2020, so not too long after they opened. And several of the beers that I had are actually on tap right now. My personal favorite was the Schwartz beer, the dark German lager, and it was absolutely delicious, very, very well done. And that is currently on tap as well if you want to go there. The milk can stout was another one that I had during my visit that you can get there. And some of the other beers that are kind of highlighted on the menu are the Back to Basics Blonde Ale, if you're looking for something a little bit lighter. They also had a Friars Retreat, a Belgian quad, which is not a beer that you see at every brewery, as well as, of course, every brewery, well, almost every brewery has to have a New England Hazy IPA, and they do have that as well, called Foghorn. So Burlington has, as I mentioned, two breweries, and a short walk from the Runaway is Low Daily. And Low Daily opened only a few months after the Runaway, which is kind of interesting when you consider a town the size of Burlington going from having no breweries to two breweries within the span of just a couple months in the middle of the pandemic, no less. And this building was actually built in 1926 by Milwaukee Electric Rail Light Company as a train station. And then what it actually was better known for, though, locally in many ways because of the life that it lived, was the home of Burlington Standard Press. And now, though, it is home to a brewery. And this has got the more typical feel, I would say, of the two, of a more typical tap room location. The Runaway has a more intimate feeling, more brew pubish kind of setting, where this is more open, modern feeling. And then if you go through and actually walk through the brewery to their large back patio, it is on the Fox River. And although it's a lot of it is covered with greenery, you can actually see part of the river if you stand in the right place. They do also make several different seltzers as well as a sparkling hop water. I forget, I counted, there was at least 5 or 6 different seltzers, I believe, when I checked. Most of them were just in cans, but they do have it on their tap list that they do have a spot for seltzers on tap as well. They do not offer the same amount of food as a place like the Runaway, but they do have snacks. But I really enjoyed the beer here. And in this case, they had, some of the lighter stuff, Country Casual Golden Ale, the Format Pilsner, as well as I know they had several IPAs, such as the Cowboy. And then they did have a couple different fruited sours as well. One of which, Lounge Hours, is one that I had when I visited back in 2020, which shows that it obviously has it was obviously liked when they made it the first time. The fruited sour with orange, mango, and tangerine. If they've brought it back, I don't know exactly how many times, but it is back now. I know Cowboy, I should have mentioned, is also considered to be one of the more flagships, the hazy IPA. And then they also had 2 different stouts, one that was just referred to as an imperial stout that was called Double Just. And then they have the same beer, Double Just Barrel, which is the exact same stout, but it is barrel aged. And then one little kind of fun story that I learned about Low Daily from my visit that I went back through my notes for was that Tim Sullivan is a Burlington native, the guy behind Low Daily. And he actually worked at both Carl Strauss in San Diego and Ecliptic in Portland, Oregon, which are 2, fairly big names out there on the West Coast when it comes to beer. And the name seems maybe like a little bit random. And the story isn't going to dispel that notion as all, because he actually came up with the name Low Daily. He and some friends were sitting on a rooftop in LA drinking beers. And apparently they were talking about, brewery and brewing stuff. And there was an old hotel across the street with a faded sign that said Low Daily and Weekly Rates. And he said that if I was ever going to open a brewery, it was going to be called Low Daily. And here he is. And if you're looking at the screen there, you can kind of see some pictures of, the patio, the interior, some of the can labels that they're currently offering at the tap room. And they're in kind of the middle. The black and white photo is from the building back when it was a train station. And so just to kind of put it into perspective, when I say they're close, I really mean they're close. This was kind of a similar format what we used last month, and I threw it together again just to kind of show where the breweries are. And you're literally talking like maybe a 3-minute walk, 2 blocks away. I know that there's other restaurants and little stores and whatnot there in downtown Burlington, right close to the river, that you could make a little nice afternoon out of it. But they really are a stone's throw apart. Not often that you have breweries that close together. So it's kind of nice that if you are visiting Burlington, you're able to, kind of double dip and compare and contrast. But yeah, I think that's a nice little visit. Like I said, it's fairly close-ish to the 2 most major metro areas, but all of southern Wisconsin is within a decent drive of Burlington. And I personally really enjoyed the beers that I had at both breweries. I'd like to get back at some point, or at least get to try more of their beers. But yeah, I think that kind of wraps it up here, and I'll be looking forward to seeing where we head next.